Right. Well, welcome to the Devon and Cornwall Record Society's second of its podcasts in its new series, looking at new books. We have a variety of different authors, all interested in the history of Devon and or Cornwall. And today we have Ian Maxted, who many people remember from his job as Devon County Local Studies Librarian at the West Country Studies Library in Castle Street. But others will know him through his tremendous website, Exeter Working Papers in Book History, which is all freely available online. But today he's going to tell us about his new book, or recent book, The Story of the Book in Exeter and Devon, which came out this past year. And I'm just going to ask you, Ian, tell us a little bit about it.
Well, its title doesn't really say what it's all about. It's really more about the published text, but that doesn't sound a very catchy title, does it? It's basically any text that is being communicated in a written form, starting off with, for example, inscribed coins, and going through to graffiti, monumental inscriptions, manuscripts, which are meant for wider distribution. And they both can include letters, for example, which are intended, well, from the time of St. Paul, of course, they were included in the canon of the Bible. But Boniface is a good example for Devon. The work of scriptoria, printers, newspapers, right on to webmasters, all producing text in large quantities. And that's what it's about. It's also not just about the production of text, it's about the distribution of texts. So it includes paper makers who produce the raw material on which the medium on which the written text is distributed, booksellers, publishers, libraries, archives, and their relationship as well to the authors and readers of those texts. So it's a very wide canvas. It's not just about a book. It's about literacy to a large extent. That's what the readership would be, people who are actually able to read, and therefore a bit about education. But it's also about the survival of the oral tradition as well, and poetry, the importance of poetry in transferring information, on into the penny readings, for example, where books were actually sort of read out, extracts from books were read out to meetings of people. The survival of the manuscript into the age of print as well, and the survival, of course, of the printed book in the age of the internet. It's also about the networking, the way that ideas are spread, be it scholars corresponding, the postboys riding the streets of roads of 18th century Devon, carrying newspapers in their saddlebags, and of course the internet now as a means of transferring information. So you'll see from this, it covers at least 2 millennia. I think there might be transfers of texts for as long as 3 millennia, but that's a little bit speculative, perhaps we could say. It covers, therefore, things like the building of medieval libraries, the Exeter Cathedral Library, the impact of the Reformation, religious controversy, getting into print. There's a big project on at the university at the moment on just that topic. News books and broadsheets, popular literature, illustrated books, maps, and so on. The growth of libraries, the destruction wrought by war, and the destruction by austerity over the last decade. So it does bring the story right up to date. I think it's a rag bag of a book, I've described it as.
I mean, the problem is for a reader to understand all that, it's such a monumental work. And you've been doing this for so long. And anybody who looks at your website will just see the amount of detail there, which is, the first place to start for any number of projects. If students only knew what was there, and I'm sure a lot have never found it because it's just absolutely enormous. I mean, nobody has done nearly anything like this before for Devon. So, it truly is, it's not just unique and groundbreaking and original, it is just stunning. I mean, I think absolutely stunning. Can you explain a little bit about your sources? Because I don't think people can understand or appreciate just how much you've looked at.
Well, I sometimes say that I'm the best read person when it comes to Devon history, because I've read about 50,000 books,
Yeah.
but I've only read the title pages. So I fly high and very superficially, but it's been a product of over 50 years, even before I came down to Exeter in 1977. I'd started going through sources, looking for material. But that was on a national level, and a lot of my work is still on a national, not say international level. But for example, I was going through things like the Inland Revenue apprenticeship registers. I haven't got all the way through them even yet, but I've covered the first 80 years or so of them, from about 1712 to 1777. I've done that on a national level, but that picks up quite a lot of Devon apprentices as well. Insurance policy registers, that was while I was still up at the Guildhall Library in London. And again, that was on a national level, but only for a limited number of years. My interest started off in the 18th century, and they spread earlier and later from there. A list of bankruptcies, trade directories, of course, begin to be very important in the 18th century for that sort of thing. And above all, the information provided by the imprints of books. So I've been using catalogues and bibliographies as well, gleaning them, indexing them, so that we know what individual publishers produced. So, I mean, it's ironic in a way that many of the sources are ones that I have created. So it's rather unusual. I mean, I put together a biographical dictionary of the Devon book trades, which are on the Exeter Working Papers website, lists of books with Devon imprints, with Devon bibliography. There's something that I set in train as well. And that was published from the West Country Studies Library. But since then, because local studies librarianship in Devon has completely collapsed, I've had to pick that up. But how long I'll be able to continue it for, I don't know. So it is a wide range of sources, and of course a lot of the normal sources for things like births, marriages and deaths, parish registers, wills, but usually I haven't gone through those systematically. It's sometimes just to track down details of particular individuals.
Well, I mean, for someone who's looked at the website, they'll see this massive information about Exeter. And what you've done is you've condensed it to a point and put it in a stronger narrative of Exeter. What surprised you when you had to limit yourself? Because on the net, you can, another couple hundred words doesn't matter so much, whereas the book, you've got to be more careful. When you started to pull it together, what did you think about it? Did you think, oh, crumbs, I haven't realized that?
I think there are a lot of different things that have come to light. The one was the fact that certainly in the 19th century, the big industries in the world of the book were not the printers, they were the paper makers.
Mm.
And if you do an analysis of the census returns, for example, which is another source which I've been using, but not all of the censuses, but I've certainly done it for 1851 for Exeter. There are far more people employed, a lot of them women, in the paper mills than were employed in printing, bookselling, and so on. And that surprised me. We had 4 paper mills, I think, in working at that time in Exeter. None now, of course. So that's one thing that surprised me. Another was the lack of information, the frustrating lack of information in many of the sources that I approached. Sources such as Alan Brockett's Devon Union List and Davidson's Bibliotheca Devoniensis don't give the names of the printers or publishers. So there's a lot of imprint information that's missing there. And I've had to glean those from various other sources. So that is certainly something that surprised me and might have turned me off from pursuing it if I'd have realized in advance, quite how difficult it was going to be. Another thing was the depth of time of the book trade and the international links in the very early period. And the letters of Boniface are an interesting example there, where you find him corresponding back to England and the West Country, asking for copies of manuscripts, saying that the ones that are out here are too cramped and difficult for my eyes, which are getting tired. And this information, of course, was facilitated by the use of Latin as a language, a lingua franca for scholarship. And it's really the growth of printing that has militated against that in many ways, because there are very few Latin texts that were printed in Exeter. Only in the very early period. And the view of it tends to have become more blinkered, and the hegemony of English has meant a much narrower world view. You don't get people in Devon or Exeter looking across to the continents now in the ways that they used to. Even in the 18th century, for example, when there's a wonderful collection of correspondence between the Coffin family up at Alvington, remote, right on the edge of the sea in North Devon, corresponding weekly with somebody in London, buying books which have come in from sales and have come in from the continent, from printers in Antwerp and so on. There's this international level of interest in the book. I've not got so much evidence of that for Exeter in particular, but that is a really precious source for the breadth of people. Another thing is that local publications are very neglected. There are very few of the local publications are picked up now by the Devon Bibliography, for example, and extending my researches into the present day, and it goes right up to date. I mean, I first put this book together at the turn of the millennium, but it never actually came to anything. And so I put it away and dusted it down until Exeter became a UNESCO City of Literature. I thought, well, this would be a useful background book. So I updated it. I found the updating was very difficult because the British National Bibliography lists very few local publications. And they are not being picked up locally now that there's no
necessarily in the libraries.
Yeah, yes, they're not recorded at all. But this period is going to be a dark age for historians of the future, a new dark age, I think. Well, I suppose it's not as dark as it might be because of what I've been doing. But I mean, there's very little, for example, I can draw people's attention to important works that have come out recently, but there's no guarantee if they're digital publications that they're going to be archived anywhere.
Well, Ian, I think what you've done is an extraordinary service. I mean, it's been, you know, a work in progress for so long, and it's evolving all the time. And you're finding out more and more information which builds up. I mean, you know, it is a staggering life work you've done and you've contributed. So the story of the book in Exeter and Devon, £15.
So I weighed it. There we are.
Packaging and postage included. We'll put the details of how to get the book on our website, and people can write to us if they can't find it through our email on Devon Cornwall Record Society website, and we'll give them details. But in the meanwhile, thank you very much, Ian, for giving your time, and
You're welcome.
good luck with the book. I know it's selling well anyways, so hopefully you get a few more sales.
Right, thanks.
Right.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.